This is what a paddock on a typical dairy farm looks like. And this is one on an indoor dairy farm. Note the lack of fences, pasture, Friesians or jerseys. The grass gets harvested every 6 weeks, and because cows aren't trampling, piddling or pooing on it, almost 100% of it feeds the herd and becomes milk. It's a different system to what we know in this country, but one Lincoln professor thinks it could be the answer to one of the biggest problems in the dairy industry: nitrogen leaching.
Now we realise that these cows are dropping a lot of nitrogen in their urine down into the soil and that it's going down into the water. It's been happening for a long time, but now that we're farming more intensively, it's got even worse.
Dr. Woodford says it's clear something needs to be done. Farming less intensively and destocking will reduce the amount of nitrogen leaching, but it will still occur. 60% of one herd would still produce 60% of that herd's waste. He says in environmental terms, they only need to be off pasture for part of the year.
The nitrogen only leaches down through the soil when the soil is waterlogged. So that tends to be in winter, but we also have to get the cows off in late autumn. Otherwise, the concentration of nitrogen is too high in the soil when the winter rains do come.
But given an indoor model means new cost, financially you need them off pasture for more than just part of the year.
So you harvest the feed and bring it to the cows. Now that involves extra costs, no doubt about that, but the cows reward you by giving a whole lot more milk.
But don't take Dr. Woodford's word for it. I spoke to a farmer who's been on an indoor model for the last 2 years. He chose to remain anonymous, but says the system pays. On kgs of milk solids a cow per season, he more than doubles the Dairy NZ 2012-2013 average of 346.
We weren't really 100% sure how we'd go. We were hoping for above 700, but in the first season they averaged 833, so we're really happy with that.
He says the cows wouldn't perform that way if they weren't treated well. The temperature in the shed is like baby bear's porridge.
Internationally, it's sort of recognised that the ideal temperature for a cow is between -5 and 15. So, and the -5, they've got to be dry, but they handle, the cold really well, but not chill factor or, being wet and cold.
He says above 24 degrees, cows are vulnerable to heat stress. This shed provides shade, and in hot weather, fans can cool it. These cows have 3 milkings a day, but none of those involve walking to and from a shed, so there's little to no lameness. The milking herd stays inside 24/7.
So what would be the hassle to let them out in the paddock for, say, a few hours a day or maybe a week or something like that? Does it just make your system simpler if you don't do that?
Yes, definitely. It would be no advantage. You'd lose production and you'd lose milkings, so the cows are far better off in the same environment all the time than chopping and changing.
As for the effluent and in turn the nitrogen, the waste from the cows, well, it doesn't go to waste. These scrapers push the effluent into a drain, which goes into this pond. Then it's dispensed when it won't leach, which means they don't use any nitrogen fertiliser. He says it's his business, and it's no skin off his nose whether other people adopt the model or not. For him, it was a financial choice.
We've seen what the sort of cows we're breeding are capable of because they're in these systems, overseas, North America and Europe, these systems are the norm.
The dairy farmer says while it's outside the square in this country, it's widely used overseas. Lincoln Professor Keith Woodford says he's not telling everyone to shift to an indoor model, but we should look at it.
We've got to do the sums, we've got to do the experiments, we've got to watch closely what some leading farmers are already doing with case studies and work out how best to do it. So it simply requires an open mind that we say, hey, some of the things that we thought were right in the past aren't necessarily right going forward.
He admits there'll be opposition from not only the urban public, but those who believe in the low-input, pasture-based system that's allowed New Zealand to produce and export milk at a low cost for the entire history of our dairy industry. Dr. Woodford says the cost of setting up a shed just for wintering a herd is $2,000 a cow. Patrick Phelps, CTV News.